In our first year of marriage, I moved over to Melbourne, which was really exciting. I was doing my final year of study, so I wasn't working, and it was Andrew's third year of AFL, but it didn't go how we expected, and it was a lot tougher than we thought.
Yeah, I suppose my form probably wasn't great early in the year, and then I suffered a pretty substantial injury, did my ankle, missed a fair bit of time, and I suppose at that point it was like the career was up in the air a little bit, so there was question marks over it, and so for us, being newly married, was I suppose quite challenging.
In that first year, we had goals and dreams that we wanted to achieve, and it didn't go how we expected. At that time, we also started with wealth enhancers, and they gave us a lot of hope because they made us realise that no matter what you're earning or where you start from, you are always in a place where you can control your finances through budgeting and through your various bank accounts and through, even small investments that you make. So even though it was a tough time, it was a very empowering time because we didn't necessarily look at, what we'd been given, but we looked at how we could use what we'd been given to the best opportunity that we could.
It also, I suppose, helped us make or create good habits, which was really, I think, important, because you always think when you earn more money, it's easy to save and it's easy to do this, but majority of the time people's lifestyles get bigger and they just they eat into the I suppose what savings there could be. So developing those habits early on really enabled us when I actually started playing footy, and my career started becoming a bit more successful. We were able to maintain those.
Both Andrew and I have always had big dreams and ambitions, but sometimes those dreams and ambitions can seem really daunting and you're like, I'd love to do that, but where do I start? How do I do it? So it just stays as a dream. And I found when I would voice those in my coaching sessions or to, one of the other members in the community, they would be so encouraging and supportive and look at me like, of course you could do that. Why don't you just start? And you're like, yeah, but, where on earth do you start? And then I'd find in the coaching sessions, they'd help me see all the little steps that I could take to get the business started or to employ my first employee, or then to build the clinic. And it made those really big dreams seem achievable and not so I wasn't so fearful about it anymore. I honestly would not have seen my dreams realised if I didn't have that encouragement or the actual practical advice and support to take those little steps to see a big dream realised.
Yeah, I suppose it's similar to football in that, if you can break down those goals, like we have a big goal every year, is to win a premiership, but how do we actually see that unfold? You've got to win enough games for the season, so you've got to break it down to that. You've got to break it down even further to making sure that you're fit enough to be able to run out the game. So you look at pre-season and you break that down, and you need to be strong enough, so you break that down into your weights, what you're doing. So there's so many different things, and everything that you do through the wealth enhancers process, they help to be able to break down what do you value, what are your goals, and how are you going to go about and achieve them. We wouldn't be in the position we're in today if we had been just left to our own devices. You sort of need a plan to be able to work your way through and ultimately reach your big goals at the end. And we've reached a couple of them, and hopefully got a couple more that we'll achieve in the future. One of our big goals was to get a house. You had a lot of different ideas on what you wanted in a house.
Yeah, and I think I didn't want to renovate or build because I didn't think we had the time or the talent to do it, but Andrew really did. At the start of the journey, it was a really big goal, and I guess we were able with Wealth Enhancers just to bring that idea to them and say, hey, we'd love to buy a house or build a house one day. And then what I loved about the process is that it was so holistic about every facet of that. And when we presented that idea in our first coaching meeting when we were just married, didn't have any savings. For us, it was like, where do you start? And I always, never found it very logical to spend a whole heap on interest. And I found with the advice that we were given, it wasn't just, like save the minimum deposit you can and then pay your mortgage off. We looked at how much money, I was bringing in, Andrew was bringing in, and then every day what our budget was going to be so that we could save that certain amount to work towards it. But then we also looked at what we were renting, and, at the time we just bought our first investment property and we were going to move into it. And then I remember, you guys gave us the advice, well, actually, if you rented that out and then rented yourselves, you would save an extra $10,000 a year. That wasn't even an option to us. Like, we didn't even realise that. So, we looked at the finances we had, and then our property choices that we could make. And then, every quarter when we'd meet for our coaching meetings, we were kept accountable for the budget that we'd set in place and the savings that we had. And then we were also built a lot of awareness around not having all your eggs in one basket either. So looking at investments across the board and, shares, and really managing our insurances, and also looking at what sort of bank accounts we had. So even when we had no money and we had a big goal, every tiny little aspect was structured so that, and I think it took us, 4 years to reach that goal. But because we managed all the little parts, we actually achieved the big goal. And I wouldn't even have known that there were those parts to manage if we weren't with Wealth Enhancers.
The first night that I'll sleep in the house, and hopefully a couple of weeks, it'll be one of the best nights I reckon I'll ever have, because I'll just be so happy that we've created something that we're really happy with, and we're going to be able to bring up our family.
I think, it was about 4 years ago that 5 years ago maybe, that we brought that goal. And I think of what I've learnt in 5 years to to save, to budget, instead of compromising on the things that are really important and that what we would love in a home, to actually sacrifice now to get in the future. Along the process, we decided to, renovate, and then eventually happened to be a full build. So Andrew has learnt how to build a house and project manage, and you've discovered a passion in that, which we didn't know that you had. And so I feel so blessed that even though the time may have taken longer, I feel like we've learnt so many things that we will take on for the rest of our lives. By committing to the journey and by committing to the process, to do something well rather than to do something fast, I think the benefits far outweigh that quick gratification that you get. So originally, I thought I wanted to work with adults because that's the natural progression you take with speech therapy. But then when I was applying for jobs, I was offered a lot of paediatric positions, and one specifically working more a consultant role to 3 different schools. And then in talking with Andrew about it and seeing where we're going.
I listed one at the start, and I said, no, you've got it, there's a great job there, why don't you go and try it for a year and get some experience and then go from there. And that was pretty much how this started.
And in the end I thought, well, working school hours, 11 weeks of paid holidays, 9 to 4 is probably lovely for a first job. So I took that position, and that was 4 days a week. And then I also got offered a 1-day position in the hospitals. And I really felt the right thing to do was to work with the kids. But I guess I thought that I wanted to work with adults. But then actually when I started working, the work in the hospital that I thought it was actually very, results driven and not so much people focus, which is more where my strengths lie. And so I discovered that actually working with children and with families was a lot more rewarding, because I guess I could bring my stronger set of skills to working with kids. And then also you see great results and quicker things. And then at that time, one of my principals asked me if I worked privately. And initially I didn't, and he just asked if I could help some family friends of theirs. So I kind of started with one client privately, and when I met them, I guess my heart went out to them and I really wanted to help. From there, word of mouth spread, and more and more people were asking if I could come and see their kids.
I suppose that your business started organically, it wasn't I think when you first graduated, you never intended to start your own business, and as you said, you want to work in hospitals. But once you got your first client, and it just built, and then after maybe a year or two of doing that on the side, you started going into it full time.
Once I realised the role I could play by coming alongside families, and the more and more kids I worked with and families that I was on the journey with, I realised that the role in private practice was actually really significant, because you can dream as big as you like, and you can, if you see something that you want to change, you're actually empowered to change it because you're the one in charge. And I actually found that perhaps the greatest help I could be was by growing a business, but I had absolutely no idea how to do it.
But you definitely learnt along the way, like the skills that you've developed, and you probably didn't think you had some of them, but you've the organisational, getting things ready, finding a building, employing people, setting contracts, all those things. Like Elise has done most of them on her own. I've come along and given my 2 bits of advice every now and then, but
I think you can always ask the question. So when I didn't know something, and Wealth Enhancers was a really big part of that, and discussions I'd have with people, like I would have an idea, it'd be wonderful to employ someone else, and then I'm like, what on earth do you need when you employ someone? Like,
how much do you pay them?
How much do you pay them? What contracts do you write? Like, do I need insurance? Like, I had no idea. I guess that's where the Wealth Enhancers coaching and community was invaluable, because I could actually ask those questions and get informed advice about what I should do. So the nitty-gritty of how to do it, Wealth Enhancers was amazing for that, because I would have the idea, and the ability to enforce it, but I didn't know what to do. So I guess being able to have the guidance, okay, you have to, set up certain things, was very valuable. And then you actually have to get in and do it, and obviously you don't always do it right the first time, and you've got to have grace for yourself on the journey too, and realize that if you're growing, you're going to take risk, and you're also going to make mistakes, and that's okay. That's a part of the journey. People are really drawn to passion, and so if you're passionate about something and you've got a dream, people will get alongside and help you. You're not on your own in it. And so if you've got the idea, why not talk about it and ask and see what comes? And 9 times out of 10 the opportunities arise and people come along board and help, and then your community grows wider, and more people are blessed by being a part of your journey and seeing that dream fulfilled.
The great thing and meeting different people on the journey with Wealth Enhancers is you talk about putting people around you who are going to encourage you and inspire you and help you to dream. And I think that's one thing we've enjoyed is there's so many people out there in society who want to pull you down and say that you can't go and do this, but I don't think there's ever been one time where I can remember where someone said, no, you can't do that. It's always been the opposite. It's always been, well, why don't you do it?
Or do it bigger.
Yeah, do it.
Like, why do it that small? Why don't you do it like this? And you're like, oh, flip, okay.
Which is really, I think, rare, and I think that's been invaluable for us in both our respective careers.
Sometimes when you do run a business, you're the leader and you're at the top, and the same for you being the captain of the footy club. You're the leader and you're at the top, and you don't always feel like there's a lot of people up there with you. And sometimes when you're chasing a dream and a vision and a goal, it's scary for you too, and you're doing your best job, and you've got a lot of people around you who are telling you to go for the status quo and are telling you to just do things the way everyone's done it before and play safe. When you've got an idea or a dream to do something big that could actually change the world. And what I've loved about Wealth Enhancers is any time I, met with the other members or had our coaching meetings, I didn't feel alone, and I felt like there was people up there with us. And like Andrew said, it wasn't just, oh, that's the dream. Oh yeah, see how you go with it. Which is the response you get from a lot of people. Oh, good luck with that. Like, yeah. But any people in the Wealth Enhancers community were always encouraging us to do it, or do it better and do it bigger, which I have found invaluable, because it is lonely when you feel like you're doing it on your own sometimes, and scary too. So that support has been invaluable. And reading some research and some information coming out from a specialist in Israel, Dr. Elad Vashti. And the family called me and said, have you heard about Elad Vashti in Israel? And I was like, yeah, funny, actually, I've just been reading his research. And they said, we would love him to head up our program here for our son. And would you be able, if he heads it up, would you be able to run it from Melbourne for us? And I obviously knew that this was an amazing opportunity. And I think in any business or in any dreams that you have defining moments where you can take a risk, take a jump, and take your opportunities given, and follow that intuitive lead to the direction you could take. And I really felt this was one of those moments. And within this program, I was given the opportunity to learn how to see how all the developmental systems work together. And I realised that families and children need this. And I believe our childhood is a time where we should play and interact and jump in the mud and play in the rain and have this wonderful creative time. And that is true for a lot of typically developing kids, but for children with developmental disorders, it doesn't always happen. And therapy can be a very clinical process, and they spend a lot of their time in waiting rooms and in very medical environments, which I think for a child is very difficult. From this first moment working with this little boy, I realised that my dream was to set up therapy programs, but also an environment where children could develop and learn in the place that they were best suited to, and in a place where they had fun and thrived, and the therapy relationship was connected and joyful, and where you have evidence-based practice, so where you do the best research, looking at assessments and therapy, but then you do it in a way where the child thrives and flourishes. When I saw this child talking and communicating, building friendships and going to school when paediatricians and other speechies had told him that he never would be able to, I knew at that moment that I had to build this clinic and make that dream and that idea come to life. The best thing about Wealth Enhancers for us has been they've been there right from the start and taken us through the whole journey and have kept us accountable and actually enabled us to both reach our dreams that we never would have been possible if we didn't have that support along the journey. We're about to move into our new house that we've been building towards for 5 years, and
about to have a baby, so yeah, really excited over the next couple of months. Bit scary, but yeah, I think we're really looking forward to and we're really ready for the next stage of life, and what that holds, and yeah, looking forward to going on that journey with Wealth Enhancers and yeah, hopefully taking us into a happy, healthy future.